So our next incredible speaker is Tom Mackenzie. He's Global Innovation Director at the agency PhD. And his talk is Capitalise on Creativity. Tom, if you're there, you've got 99 seconds. Remember, you get horned off after 99 seconds. Then we'll go to questions. So if you're ready, Tom,
yeah, all good.
Starts now.
Cool. So innovation is really born out of uncertainty, and the situation we find ourselves in is pretty uncertain times. But these kind of constraints often lead us to kind of channel our creativity and be a little bit more resourceful and inventive with what we do. We think there are kind of two areas really to focus on. The first one is really about rethinking what is communicated. So what can brands share beyond advertising to kind of offer value and start to build slightly more meaningful and longer term relationships with their audience? For example, every brand's powered by designers, scientists, engineers. Why not use that as a creative platform to kind of inform and entertain in equal measure? And just rethinking how we take advertising out and not kind of traditional ads, but kind of services and almost let people in to see the skills which kind of power that brand in a slightly more compelling way. Then on the other side of things is creating new ways to communicate. And I mean, I think we all know that kind of consumer behavior, media behavior is massively changed amidst a kind of a backdrop of limited in-person contact. And this is a really interesting opportunity to kind of elevate customer experience and personalization by kind of delivering personality through technology. Kind of fundamentally as humans, we're kind of hardwired to best respond to faces. They create trust and memorability. So rather than kind of personalization appearing as kind of a text-based format, it's kind of surfaced via an algorithm, what if we can use the likes of synthetic media to help visualize this, kind of add a human face to that recommendation? Because I think the kind of platform which is used to communicate it is almost as impactful as the message itself. And if we skip to the next slide, we wouldn't even need a real person. This is kind of spooky and great in equal measure, but this is just, all of these faces are generated by AI. None of these people are real. You can see how the progress has kind of escalated in the past few years. So if we add kind of a face to our personalization and almost like custom brand avatars, we can create this infinite suite of kind of new brand, I guess, almost ambassadors to deliver our messages. There we go. That's good enough.
Just horned off. You almost got a lot across. So there's loads to talk about there. Let's go into some Q&A. I guess first question, I think, which is, again, we see this all the time. A couple of people have asked this in different ways. Lucia asks, do you think a brand needs a dedicated innovation budget?
I think it's a great question. I don't think so. Speaking from kind of the work we do, innovation is really, the definition is just a new method or technique. So innovation should really kind of be baked in through everything we do. I think how we kind of approach it is it's almost a spectrum. You have very much the kind of elevation of brilliant basics, which should almost be mandatory on every kind of piece of comms which is delivered, right through to the slightly more kind of jazz hands, stereotypes version of innovation. But I don't think there should be a separate budget. I think it should kind of find its way to manifest itself in kind of everything we do.
There's a question here from, let me surprise everyone listening, it's Julia. Julia asks, you talk about new ways of communicating, but I'm curious as to what old ways of communicating should really not be used today. Good question, Julia. Good question.
It's a really good question. I mean, in these times, I think people have obviously found kind of new ways to socialize, new ways to behave. I don't necessarily think there are kind of old channels or ways to not communicate in. I think the stock phrase is the oldest media reinvents itself to keep up with the pace of change. So I think there's never almost a kind of an old channel to disregard. It's kind of probing it to find actually new ways to communicate through it as much as kind of disregarding it. I think people are often quick to write off certain channels or kind of even communication platforms, but it's about finding a slightly kind of opening door and nuancing it to deliver a message in a slightly more compelling way using it. That kind of makes sense.
Good answer, yeah, perfect answer. There's a question here from Umberto, I think you said, who says, how can I bring my board along for the ride? I do believe that innovation is so important to how we change as a brand, but my board seems stuck in the mud.
It's a question we get all the time. Innovation is kind of that dirty word. I think the first thing to set out is innovation, you have to be prepared to fail. By the nature of it, it's kind of doing new things. And again, new things mean kind of different things to different people. But I think, firstly, setting out that notion of that we have to be prepared to kind of fail to innovate and to progress is really important. So I think that's kind of the main one, really.
Perfect. Okay, lovely. A question here from Freddie, who asks, should we now be, okay, this goes back to your slide, should we now be using fake people as our brand? It's a good question.
This was always going to come up with that image. It's a really, obviously it's an ethically difficult question, but the reason I thought just kind of would mention it is we're in a world where kind of filming, production, and that side of things is really on pause. And every brand seems to be delivering a very, very similar message, albeit with a nuance. I mean, I've never had so many emails from CEOs of brands who kind of care about me. And I think if we can use a shortcut to create new people to deliver the message, to kind of engage in platforms which have kind of been embraced as part of this, it's very much that human layer, really. I mean, it's a difficult one. It's an ethical one. I think as well, I would probably say kind of make clear that it's not a real person. I think the backlash you'd face off that is huge and probably not worth it. So outlining very clearly that it is an AI generated person, but the opportunity it presents is huge, from localizing from different kind of countries, localizing who delivers the message. It is super interesting and something we can do in a world of no filming.
Tom, amazing. I've got one last question here I'm going to go to, which is from Kwame, who asks, what's your advice on how you walk the line between personalized brand experiences and creepy ones?
Yeah, it's a very, very fine line. I think it's really, it sounds so obvious, it's really just being real and human. I think what people sometimes do is, that some of this tech is called deepfake, which is a horrible phrase, and it does worry people. But I think it's just being real and human. It's really, as I say, setting out from the start, very clear about kind of what you're kind of experiencing and that it's not a real person. And I think that's the kind of key thing. Again, I know I kind of repeating myself, but I think if people understand that that person isn't real, they're not going to be able to respond to everything. It kind of puts people at ease rather than thinking it's some kind of mythical face which can address any and every need. I think that's the key one.
Tom, fantastic. Lots of good answers to difficult questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Cool. Thank you.